Well, now on BBC One, because the Oscars took a little longer than expected, we're making a later than scheduled handover to BBC News 24.
And we're just happy to be celebrating some really great performances and some great work again, you know, and it's nice to see the red carpet back in action.
But while the red carpet was liberally dusted in Hollywood's A-list, many of the nominees were less accustomed to the bright lights, especially the 13-year-old Best Actress nominee, Keisha Castle-Hughes.
I mean, it's nuts, and tonight I'm like, so I keep looking around while I'm doing interviews, and I keep seeing, like, I saw Jamie Lee Curtis, and I get really distracted because I get starstruck.
But this was a night for hobbits. Lord of the Rings, Return of the King won Oscar after Oscar after Oscar.
We have so many people coming up and just saying, I love the movies. And that's what you make movies for at the end of the day. It's not about the awards or even the box office. It's just the fact that you've entertained people.
And if that wasn't a surprise, neither were many of the other awards. Most went to the favourites. Best Supporting Actor, Tim Robbins in Mystic River. Best Supporting Actress, Renee Zellweger in Cold Mountain. And Jude Law appeared reconciled to playing a supporting role in the Best Acting category to Sean Penn.
I certainly don't expect to win, and I don't even see it as winning. I mean, I'm very happy to be here. Like you, I mean, I think Sean deserves it. I think his work in the years has been second to none. He's the actor of his generation, a great inspiration to me.
But if it's anyone's night, it seems to be Peter Jackson's and Lord of the Rings. David Silito, BBC News, Hollywood.
Well, welcome to our viewers on BBC One who are just joining us now live from the Oscars in Los Angeles. And we're going back there now to Julia Bockfield, who's at the Vanity Fair party. Call that work, Julia, at a party with Vanity Fair car.
Yeah, it is hard work, actually. We've been here all day waiting, and what actually happens here is that the press are here in their hundreds. You have to get in really, really early and stand by outside Morton's. It's a flash West Hollywood restaurant where this big Vanity Fair party takes place, and they've dressed it up and kitted it out. You can see the great big hedge behind me, the topiary, to give it its right name. 30 feet wide, 10 feet high, cut out of myrtle, and spelling the words Vanity Fair. There are pink lights, there are palm trees. This is Hollywood in every sense of the word.
And there's only one film they're really talking about tonight, and that's Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, they've managed an incredible achievement. I think I'm right in saying this is the first time ever that a film at the Academy Awards has won in every single category it was nominated in. So 11 nominations, 11 awards. Other films have won the same number of awards in the past. Both Ben-Hur and Titanic took home 11 Oscars, but in each case they were actually nominated for more, so it wasn't a clean sweep for either of those. So you're right, everyone's talking about Lord of the Rings. Some people are saying the whole thing felt a little bit predictable because, as you were hearing in that report from David just a few minutes ago, even in the other categories, the favourites won. You had Tim Robbins for Best Supporting Actor, an incredible performance in a very powerful film directed by Clint Eastwood. That was Mystic River. And that won another one, of course. It won for Best Actor, Sean Penn, who a lot of people think should have taken home an Oscar years ago. He's had 4 nominations in the past. The other perhaps predictable ones, Renee Zellweger, who also won a BAFTA for Best Supporting Actress in the film Cold Mountain. So in a sense, I think everyone here in Hollywood thinks that the awards went to the right people, but everyone kind of knew in advance who they were going to go to.
And the whole award ceremony has been much more upbeat this year, hasn't it? Last year, America in the midst of the war with Iraq. This year it's been much more upbeat, but this 5-second delay, that was a bit disconcerting for people watching at home. Tell us about that.
Yes, the 5-second delay, the first time they've ever done that at the Academy Awards, and there was speculation about different reasons that might have taken place. We were heard that Janet Jackson was probably the main cause of that, the little flash that took place a few weeks ago. And I was also told that it might be an issue about bad language. A lot of people felt that it wasn't really necessary at the Oscars. People generally are pretty well behaved. Hollywood takes it quite seriously. But in terms of the upbeat mood, you're absolutely right. Everyone felt that this time they wanted to enjoy themselves. They had to be quite downbeat last year. War had just broken out, the red carpet was scrapped, so this time it's one to party.
Go and get yourself a glass of champagne, Jules. Thanks very much for joining us there.
Thanks.
And now a reminder of the main international news. United Nations Security Council has voted unanimously to send a multinational military force to Haiti. President Jean-Bertrand Aristide fled the country on Sunday. American military officials say a small group of Marines has now arrived there. I'll be back with the weather and a world news summary, followed by a World Business Report with Sally Bundock. That's next. Good morning. It's bitterly cold outside. Temperatures have been quite readily falling, particularly across the snowfields down to -7 or -8. That's certainly possible. More typically -2 to -4. But suffice to say, you'll need to wrap up warm first thing and take a little extra care, because I don't think many of us will escape the frost and ice problems across many parts of the UK, so slippery on untreated roads and surfaces. The odd exception will be across the far north of Scotland. Maybe just a little more cloud here, so temperatures not dropping quite so low. And that cloud should start to clear away later on through the day. Not so first thing. The Northern Isles really suffering for much of the day with those spots of rain. Quite a brisk to strong wind here as well. But elsewhere, the clouds will thin and break, and I think bits and pieces of sunshine coming through for many areas. The temperature's not too bad, with 7s and 8s across the board. The other area of weather is down to the southeast. We watched last night 1 or 2 sleet showers coming across London. I don't think here first thing this morning, but Kent and Essex may just see 1 or 2 first thing. It's an outside chance, but these clearing away through the afternoon as well. I think quite a brisk wind coming through the Dover Straits as well here. Temperatures further inland, 6s and 7s once more. Maybe 1 or 2 mist and fog patches first thing this morning as well to the East Midlands, Cambridgeshire, those prone areas. This melting away, and many of us by the afternoon having quite a nice day. Some nice winter sunshine. I say that because the sunshine really hasn't got too much power in it at this time of the year, so temperatures only around 6 or 7 degrees. Now, Tuesday, there's no real change. High pressure is going to be the key player through Tuesday until Wednesday. I'll show you that in just a minute. A bit more cloud down these North Sea coast, just coming and going. The odd spot of rain once more for the Northern Isles. And the winds slowly picking up out towards the northwest. But generally speaking, after a frosty, icy start once more on Tuesday morning, temperatures will rise to around 6s and 7s through the afternoon, again with some sunshine. Wednesday comes the real change. At the moment, we're looking for some wet and windy weather coming in from the west. I think not feeling quite as cold with those winds turning into a southwesterly direction. It does mean rain for many western areas though, but of course we'll keep you firmly posted on that. Now, eventually the weather will start to turn for here in the UK. Milder weather coming in, but still some very, very cold weather further northwards to Scandinavia, into Moscow as well. Further southwards, this is where the warmer weather is at the moment, and take a look at these very red colours, hot colours down towards the far south of Europe. And let's have a look into Egypt. Cairo, where on Saturday afternoon, 33 degrees Celsius for the temperature. The average should be 19. We reach those average daytime temperatures through the night in Cairo on Saturday night, where the average overnight should be around 9. I've got more stories coming back from Europe. Say Haifa there, at Saturday night, 19 degrees. The average should be 10. Moscow, I said it was cold here, and yes, it still is, but the average for this time of the year is around -12. So 1 degrees on Saturday night wasn't too bad. Had an area of wet weather as well. 49 millimetres in Bilbao over 2 days. Not reaching the average, but still quite wet, and there's more to come. Now we see that unsettled weather coming back into the UK for Wednesday by the looks of it, but we'll certainly keep you posted. In the meantime, here's your summary.
The race is on for the most powerful job in the world.
Our object is to win.
Who will secure the nomination to take on President Bush in November?
George Bush's days are numbered and change is on the way.
Join BBC News 24 tomorrow on Super Tuesday as the results come in.
The South is not George Bush's backyard, and I will beat George Bush.
The US election on BBC News 24. If it happens here.
They wanted to kill as many police officers as they possibly can. And they were shouting, kill the bill, kill the pigs.
Whenever anything happened, they came to Winston. My first knowledge of a police officer had died was when there was a cheering in the house I was in. Because they think the police had it coming.
What really happened on that night? Who killed PC Blakelock? Tomorrow at 9 on BBC 2.
Hello again, welcome back to The World Today. I'm Lindsay Brancher. Sally Bundock will be here in a moment with World Business Report. But first, let me remind you of our top news stories. The United Nations Security Council has voted unanimously to send a multinational military force to Haiti. President Jean-Bertrand Aristide fled the country on Sunday. American military officials say a small group of Marines has arrived on the island. They will spearhead a larger force, including French and Canadian troops. Members of the American-appointed Iraqi Governing Council say an agreement has been reached on an interim national constitution after days of debate. A spokesman for one of the council members said the draft charter would recognize Islam as one of the source of legislation rather than the only source. Belgium's most notorious prisoner, Marc Dutroux, goes on trial later today. He's accused of murdering 4 young girls and abducting and raping 2 others. He's admitted involvement in abduction but denies the killings. The case has caused outrage in Belgium, with the police and judiciary accused of incompetence. The last episode of the Lord of the Rings trilogy, The Return of the Kings, has dominated the American film industry's annual Academy Award ceremony. The movie picked up 11 Oscars, including the most prestigious award of the night, Best Picture. That's all from me for the moment. Now time to hand to Sally for the latest financial news and our World Business Report.
Transatlantic trade war worsens. The European Union launches record trade sanctions against the US today. And taking the heat out of the euro ahead of this week's European Central Bank meeting on interest rates. This is World Business Report, starting your trading week with the latest corporate news and markets information. Welcome to the show. I'm Sally Bundock. The transatlantic tit-for-tat trade war heats up today. The European Union is launching sanctions on the United States, and this is for the first time. It's a move which could cost American exporters $300 million this year, and the World Trade Organization sanctioned the action after the US failed to get rid of $5 billion worth of tax breaks for US exporters. The US is saying it's pushing through legislation to end the tax breaks, but it hasn't been quick enough for the EU, and it's slapping gradual import duties on US goods, starting at 5% and then rising by 1% each month to a possible 17% level by March 2005. Well, the retaliatory tariffs will hit a massive list of varied US exporters. If we take a look at some of them, we've got paper, jewelry, clothes, shoes. And looking at agricultural products, we've got things like fruit and vegetables, cotton, cereals. Some meat and fish as well will also be affected. And then industrial products like electronic goods such as refrigerators, pretty much across the board we're looking at tariffs. So how will this latest European trade fight with the US affect those businesses? Let's now go live to the BBC's Brussels Bureau, and where I'm joined by the head of European law at Hammond Studars, Konstantinos Adamanopoulos. Thanks very much indeed for joining us. First of all, how damaging will these tariffs be for American companies?
At the beginning, not so much, because as you said earlier, they start in at 5%. However, they are going to be increased by 1% every month from now onwards until March next year. So March next year, they will reach 17%. From then onwards, the European Union will reconsider the position if the US has not effectively repealed the export break legislation that is at issue.
But what about, you know, the deals that have been done already? For example, you've had 2 US companies as clients that have managed to, you've managed to get them off this sanctions list. I mean, it is possible to try and avoid this action, isn't it? And if so, are they really relevant?
Yeah, well, it has been possible to avoid this action. Let's remember, this thing started back in September 2002, when the Commission received approval by the World Trade Organization to impose sanctions against the US for the US failure to adopt its tax legislation. Thereafter, US exporters and European importers have been given the opportunity to approach the European Commission in order to indeed to get their products off the list. This has happened. So I think that one should assume now that this particular list of products that is at issue relates to products where nobody has managed to make a credible representation to the European Commission with a view to taking them off the list. They will stay there until such time as I said, as the United States changes its legislation. The Commissioner Lamy said last week that it is important for the Commission that the legislation is repealed. Retaliation is not really the primary objective of the Commission. That's why the Commission comes in at a very low rate at the moment. However, if in the United States, let's remember at the moment we have presidential elections, so there may be some reason to believe that nothing will happen there until, let's say, in the foreseeable future, which actually means that the sanctions will stay in place for a while.
So I was just going to ask you what you think the outcome will be. They'll stay in place for a while. Who do you think will win in this war in the end? Very briefly.
No one is a winner here. There's no doubt about it. Nobody is a winner when there are trade wars around. The biggest winner would be the free trade system of the World Trade Organization if the United States managed to repeal this legislation and replace it with something that does not give U.S. companies a tax break on exports. If this is going to happen, I don't know, but that really will be the major win for the international trading system. If nothing happens in that respect, then I'm afraid that we're going to see more and more of this type of trade disputes, an amelioration, a weakening of the international trading system, and a fallback to bilateralism.
We're going to have to leave it there, but Konstantinos Adamantopoulos, thanks very much indeed for joining us, managing to get his name right that second time. Well, let's now have a look at what's happening on the financial markets this Monday. What an amazing start to Asian trade. Fresh highs for many of the main markets there, certainly in Japan and Taiwan. Let's go to Rico, who's busy watching all the action. Rico, what a start to the week.
Quite dizzying, Sally. There's been this feel-good factor right now in Asia with the recent better-than-expected economic reports that have been coming out of Japan, Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore, and the list goes on. And this has basically translated, Sally, into Asian share prices starting the new month on a very bright note. You have Japan's Nikkei 225 hitting 20-month highs on hopes of a more solid economic recovery going forward. The weakening Japanese yen, positive economic data, including some strong GDP and industrial output numbers, boosting domestic demand issues in Japan right now, like the retailers, property, construction, and exporters, such as technology issues. Also in Hong Kong, stocks are at fresh 3-year highs due to expectations that banking giant HSBC will be publishing better than expected earnings results later today. Mark Edo from the London Stock Exchange will give you more details in a moment. You also have Taiwan equities extending a 41-month high as financial shares like Changhua and domestic issues continue to attract buying on rising private spending. While other markets, Sally, making headway today, you have the Philippines and Singapore. As for South Korea, it has to do a lot of catching up tomorrow. It's closed today for a public holiday. And staying with South Korea, the country's exports marked their biggest gain in 15 years in February. Strong demand for semiconductors, autos, ships, and computers all helped the export sector in Asia's fourth largest economy. Exports soaring 45% from a year earlier, pushing the trade surplus to over $2 billion. Sally.
Quickly, Rico, a look at BHP Billiton's done a massive deal with China today.
Massive deal indeed, Sally. $9 billion. It's a $9 billion steel contract with China. And this is the biggest contract for the Anglo-Australia miner in the mainland. Under the deal, BHP will supply 12 million tons of iron ore annually to 4 Chinese steel makers. BHP will also set up a joint venture with the 4 mainland companies, and China is one of the world's biggest consumers of steel products. Well, Sally, that's the latest from Asia. Back over to you.
Thanks a lot, Rico. We'll see you again tomorrow. Rico there joining us from Singapore. Well, let's look at the currency market now. The weak dollar is certainly getting a boost during this early part of the trading week. There's been a blaze of currency market speculation ahead of this week's European Central Bank meeting. That's because the ECB has been under increasing pressure lately to cut rates. Eurozone politicians are saying a cut would manage to dampen down the euro, which of course has been soaring against the dollar now for some time. The currency markets reacted to talk of a rate cut. The euro fell to just above $1.24 Friday and has been trading lower against the dollar again today. Now that's down from a record high, don't forget, of just over $1.29 a week earlier. Well, Sarah Pennells has more on this scenario.
Latest figures showed the American economy grew faster than previously thought at the end of last year. In part, it was down to exports. They rose by 21%, the biggest jump in 7 years, helped by a weakening dollar. But not everyone's happy. Last week, the European Central Bank came under increasing pressure to cut rates when it meets on Thursday. But some believe, despite low inflation figures, rates will be left unchanged. Eurozone inflation is at a 4-year low, but the ECB may react against the intense pressure of last week and make a point of demonstrating its independence. And if rates aren't cut, that may not be as damaging to European economies as some have claimed.
The bottom line is that about 35 to 40% of trade done by European corporates is intra-regional trade, and only 20% at most of them export to the United States. So I think for a lot of German corporates in particular, they've indicated that their profit lines won't be hurt, provided euro remains below 130. French corporates, however, have suggested that their pain threshold is 125.
If the ECB leaves rates unchanged and employment figures in America are as weak as expected, the dollar could face even more falls. Sarah Pennells, BBC News.
Well, let's now go from currencies back to equities and look at the European trading session. One stock in particular will really hog the limelight today. It's HSBC. Let's go to Mark Edo, who's got more now from the London Stock Exchange. Mark, we've seen some amazing profits in the UK banking sector. Today is supposed to top them all, isn't it?
It is indeed. Now, this is a very important bank, the world's second biggest bank in terms of value. It's worth about 181 billion US dollars. So when it records profits, people sit up and listen. And wow, what profits we're expecting from HSBC today. Record profits for a British bank, up 34%. That's what we're expecting, to $13 billion. And the payout for shareholders will be big as well. Dividend per share up by about 13% or so. That's what it's looking like for HSBC. The reason why they're getting so much money coming in 2003 is because they bought a US lending unit called Household International, which should double profits in the United States. These profits are likely to elicit howls of protests from consumer groups that believe banks are profiting too much off the back of customers. This comes on the back, of course, Royal Bank of Scotland announcing record profits of their own as well. The bank's likely to go head-to-head with Citigroup over the next couple of years or so to try and get the Asian market. The middle class in Asia is expanding, as you know, hugely, and both companies vying for that market there. Also expecting profits today from Pearson, the Financial Times owner. It's been cautious on the outcome for 2003. It told us in December that the weaker dollar and lower profits from its educational division should eat into profits. But that should be somewhat offset by a lower tax